Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Marketing with In-Depth Podcast, where I'm your host, Nathan Webster, and I'm excited to chop it up with you today. Today's episode is part 2 with my man, Keith Sconiers. For you first-time listeners, thank you for dropping in and checking us out. You probably are here saying part 2. You go back and listen to the first one. Go back. But if you want to drop in on part 2 and see if it's worth going to the first one, I do the same. I'm kind of dyslexic that way. I'm not dyslexic for those dyslexia folks out there. I know y'all got your own struggle. But I want to say to my worldwide listeners out there, thank you for tuning into the show one more time. Y'all, we got to get our reviews up. So if you want a BU t-shirt, make sure you take a screenshot, send it to info@nwebster@lc.com. We'll wait for Apple to populate it because I need them on Apple because we need to be on the main screen of Apple Podcasts. So help us do that so we can continue to share the goodness and joy of great businesses, phenomenal people, and how they execute marketing. So without further ado, Keith, welcome back to the show. Please tell the folks who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So my name's Keith Sconiers, entrepreneur, storyteller, and catalyst. And I'm a podcaster. That's where the storytelling piece comes in. I run a podcast called Purpose. And I also run 2 businesses. One is called PaySuite. The other is Catalyst Training and Development.
Outstanding. So the part 2, and this is where y'all, you was like, okay, I want to hear Keith's story. I want to know more maybe about his business. I want to know more about how his journey, how did he overcome? And Keith, if you remember the last time we were laughing at the end, Keith was like, I didn't know. Let's redo it. I'm like, no, we absolutely will not redo that, because I think what happens is when we meet up with people, we are so surface level and we never really get a chance to get to know someone. And so I do believe it's important, because I didn't even know this about my brother here, but this is not about me. So Keith, please continue on with the story from the gentleman you helped. And when you said after you found out that you could not help him, you quit.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
Yeah. So from there, I had been in a space where I was trying to figure out what was next for me.
Okay.
And as I mentioned before, having 17 jobs over the course of 10 years, I started to feel like sales and business and these things that I thought that was really like something that I really wanted to be a part of and pursue and build businesses and things like that. I started to feel like that was not going to work, because I felt like I tried everything. And so I went through this interview process with these different companies. I had 2 offers from sales organizations that were going to pay me anywhere from 60, 70, 80, 150. That's what the potential was with those roles. But I had always made a decision based on money, right? Like, oh, if it's a lucrative opportunity, I'm in. But what I found was that most lucrative opportunities required me to lie or be something that I wasn't, or operate in a way that I wasn't comfortable with. And I was in a place where I was ready to embrace the philosophy of be you.
Ooh.
And so what I did is I had another offer from Concordia University, right? And it was nonprofit school that was, based here in the Northwest. And it was, it paid like half of what those other roles would have paid, right? But I was tired of saying no to my heart. I was tired of saying no to what I stood for. I was tired of like chasing money, right? And so I went to work for Concordia. I decided to take that role, and I loved it. I loved it, and at the same time, I felt like my skill set wasn't wired for how like the pace of nonprofit, right? Like the pace of nonprofit can be painfully slow. And so I started to feel like someone else would have been more appreciative of the role that I was in. And so I started to feel like I was stealing money because I wasn't like all in. And so I put in my 2-week notice as soon as I felt that way. And I left and started a consulting business called PaySuite. And it was called Northwest Advisory Group at the time. But as I started to work with businesses around the country, I changed the name to Pay Suite because it just didn't make sense to have a Northwest based
Right.
name, prospecting people in Florida, prospecting people in New York and the East Coast and the UK and all these other areas. So that's how I got into business consulting, the payments and working with businesses and things like that. And so yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
Okay. Man, you gotta unpack some of that though, because as you mentioned in the first episode, you came from a family of entrepreneurs. You said you had a GPA 1.3. You were
3,
also,
yeah.
now you didn't say this on the podcast, but I know you said, at least what I thought you said, or maybe I misunderstood, but were you a full Scully D1 basketball athlete?
Yeah.
So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, I know we don't have time to unpack all of that. So I'm bringing that up because you came from people that had self-initiative, had purpose, were driven.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the line you lost that, but now you're back to it. It's as if you've been
Mm-hmm.
reborn. We talked on the last episode. I congratulate you in being baptized. You're a new
Mm-hmm.
person. And so my
Mm-hmm.
question is, are you where you belong?
Oh, I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right. So with
I'm
that,
right
I'm
where I'm
gonna shut
supposed to
up.
be.
I'm gonna kind of lead you into this. So with the name of the podcast is, and I want to bring people back here because the things that you're doing, and when we say how authentic purpose driven marketing strategy works, you're doing things that are not cheap. It's not free, and you're doing it on almost like as a branding strategy. It's a long term. For those that don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
authentic, purposeful marketing is a very long tail strategy that he can win. It takes a lot of time, and you're choosing this when you didn't have anything to besides just your lineage, but you didn't have
Mm-hmm.
the lineage money because of what you said
Mm-hmm.
before, but you are
Mm-hmm.
exactly where you want to be. So I know we got about 10 minutes to unpack that, but please tell the folks how'd you overcome all that you overcome, and now you say you're exactly where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. I think I was with someone recently and they said, "Oh, you're one person away from a completely different life."
Mm,
And I think that as entrepreneurs in the culture we live in this individualistic society where we believe or think that we're somehow supposed to be amazing. We're supposed to get there by ourselves.
mm,
But if you were to watch the movie of my life, you would find thousands of people, I'm sure, that had some way had an impact on making sure that I made it here today.
mm,
Because I'm very clear that the obstacles that I experienced, the things that I witnessed as a kid, and the things that I, unfortunately had to experience, I'm very clear that, the percentages of me being here today with a purpose hat on and a mission to helping entrepreneurs live better lives and build better business, all those things is virtually, impossible.
yeah,
Right.
because
So
as a
when you ask,
hack,
like, how did I get? Yeah.
well, because here, just real quick, because as a hack, people are going to say, "Oh, I'm going to do what you do. I can wear a sports coat and wear a
Yeah.
purpose hat too. How come, he's not? You're not doing anything special."
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not doing anything special. I'm really not. I'm just being me. Right. And
Oh,
that is the part that is special. Right. And
mm,
I think that we've been, from a very young age, we've been conditioned to be pretentious and to communicate in such a way, or to dress things up in such a way that we could get the results of accolades and money and finance and all those things. And I think that the the problem with that, that's a disease, right? It's a
Mm.
disease that we've been infected with from a very young age, right? We got
Mm.
just enough support to learn how to walk. And after that, we got no more love. We had to perform ever since then. And so we do that in our life and we do it in our business. And the problem with that is that when you dress things up and they're different than what
Mm.
they really are, when it's not real, then people find out. It doesn't matter how good the marketing is, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't
Mm.
matter, right? When you're not truly being you, then it's impossible to be consistent, right? One of the most powerful things I ever heard
Oof.
from a billionaire was that if you never lie, you don't have to remember what you said, right? So if you're marketing
Facts.
and it's just a
Facts on
lie, then
facts.
that's something that you have to remember. Well, what happens when stress hits? What happens when the
Mm.
pandemic hits? What happens when you have marriage issues? What happens when you got personal health issues and you're too fatigued to keep up the dressing?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think that in the undressing and in the getting real and in the real connection, that's where it's actually special, and that's where the authenticity empowers you to actually build a business that you want to build. Because in the dressed up, like in the dressing up of things, you create what is called disconnection. So
Mm.
we have billion-dollar companies today that are being
Mm.
undressed in a lot of ways, and their business is going backwards because
Mm-hmm.
the people on the inside can see that it's dressing, and they don't
Mm.
want the dressing. And when you have
Mm-hmm.
dressing, you can't connect. You can't have your employees don't believe in the vision, mission, and values because they know that it's just dressing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you strip down to what's real and you actually like come to the table approachable, right, with humility, but at the same time with purpose, and you're able to grow your business in such a way that's just real, like this is who we are, and we fail and we're broken and we're going to mess up and we're going to be men and women enough to say, I'm sorry, right? And we're going to be also men and women enough to learn the lesson. Then you have something you can market that you can trust is going to be consistent because you're not pretending to be perfect, right? And so,
Mm.
yes, it's not special,
Mm.
right? It's not special because it's not about the dressing.
Mm-mm.
But in not having
100%.
the dressing, you can tap into what is actually special, right? And what, if you're a
Exactly.
person of faith, what the Father believes about you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and and for the people who aren't in that space, it's like you have, whether you believe in that or not, you have uniqueness that is incredibly valuable. So when
Incredibly.
you step into that, you can market that consistently without it being a dance, right? Because the dance gets
Correct.
exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Especially if you can't dance.
exactly. Right. You can't dance. It's like, whew,
And
man.
I think that's the part about where, the dance is probably where you say you hate sales because you say, I can't sell.
Mhm.
I'm not a great seller. You're not
Yeah.
selling, So, I love that part because, um, and I still want you to finish telling your story of, what made you want to overcome and be in the situation of now you're an entrepreneur.
Mhm. Nathan, I started to believe that everything that I went through was for a reason that
Mm.
wasn't, you know, I started to believe that it was for a purpose that I was going through those things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. I think Les Brown says that. But, I think I put a lot of work into my marriage in the past couple of years. And like me and my wife, we're going to Texas. We're going to a marriage conference, and we're like fired up about it. We're super excited about it. But this is like a long road to like really
Mm.
building a marriage that we are like
Mm.
proud of,
Mm.
And a lot of times those challenges don't make sense until you meet somebody else who's like, man, work's going amazing, but man, at home it's
Mm-hmm.
hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that you asked like what made me want to break through and what inspired me to kind of be this person that I am, an entrepreneur and all these things, is that like I want the kid who who at, you know, 6th grade lost his virginity to a drug addict to know that it's possible. I want the kid in 7th grade who got expelled because of his behavior at school to know that it's possible, right? I want the kid whose parents who dealt with all this abuse and all this trauma to know that, like, you can still do something special, and you can still, like, you can have a seat at the table with billionaires, right? Like, you could do anything, that nothing can stop you, that that no matter what, that you still got a shot, that you still matter, and that that you have a purpose, right? That drugs, violence, incarceration, like all the things that I had to experience as an inner city kid growing up in Fresno, California on the west side, that I just want that no matter what, that whoever listens to my story that experiences that those kids can still step into the world and dominate, right? That you're not unprivileged because you grew up on the west side of Fresno or the west side of Portland or wherever the west side represents where you live at. So that's why, that's actually what pulled me forward was, success in business and all those things, like, that's cool, but that's nothing, right? It's really about, like, giving people an example. Like, representation really does matter. When you see people who have the wounds,
So
you
true.
talk about the resurrection, right? And Jesus, like, no, this is me. Like, here, look at my wounds, right? Like, I was there. I had to cry and hold my dad and feel the cold handcuffs behind his back because he was going back to prison because he had a dirty P test, right? I went and saw my dad in prison and had to talk to him through the thick glass, right? I had to go to fast food places that had the thick glass from, like, you couldn't reach across and, tap the cashier on the shoulder, right? Because it was a violent neighborhood, right? So, like, for me, it's the stuff that we were told we couldn't do because of those things, right? The things that, we hear out there in the world of, like, oh, well, you're black, or you're this, or you're that. Like, you can't be successful. Of course you couldn't. Like, it's not built for you to be successful. But I believe that despite all of that stuff, it's actually because of those things that you can actually go out and be incredible, that you can go out and be you, right? And be amazing. And at the same time resonate with people who feel like they lost nothing, right? Like they lost everything, right? Who feel like their life is worth nothing, right? And I know those people intimately, right? I know those people intimately, and I'm here as an example to show them, or, a lot of people who have maybe even fall victim to the crack cocaine epidemic that swept across America and the black community, right? I know people who maybe felt like they got wrapped up in that and they feel guilt because they feel like they let their kids down. Well, I'm here as an example to say, no, you know what, my dad, I was at the drug house with my dad, right? But it's also, I got to see his genius too, right? I could see his genius, his imago Dei, even though I could see that he was wrestling with some stuff that he didn't understand how to fix, right? But I'm his kid, right? I'm his kid, and I'm here because of him, not in spite of him, right? He's the one who taught me. He's the one that always said, better days are coming. Right. So as it relates to business, you got kids in your business. You're trying to market your business, right? What if you could be the person that can step in to your employee's life and say, you know what, I see your genius. I see your imago Dei, right? I see what makes you special, and we're going to put that to work in our business. That's something you can market. So that's where the purpose-driven component comes into it, is that when you understand what you were made for, when you understand what your gift is and what makes you, what makes you unique, and you embrace that, then you have a roadmap to help the people, your clients, your employees, your partners figure that out too. Then you have this equity, this brand that that can really speak for itself,
Yeah.
And I think that's what it has to do with marketing, but it's much bigger than that too, right? It's much bigger than that. It's about life.
It's purpose. Man.
It's purpose.
Whew. Now, this is a show about marketing, and everything we talked about has,
Yeah.
has a lot to do with marketing, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's connection. And for those
Yes.
that say like, okay, well, he talked a lot about anything. If you're still listening, let me tell you why I invited Keith onto the show. Keith did not know me. I told him I needed let's just say I had a problem and I needed a solution. Keith did not know me from a cheese sandwich. And he said, hey, this is a person. I'm like, hey, okay, cool. Thanks for hooking me up with your friend. And Keith said, I don't know them. I just heard your problem. I was like, what? And so he fulfilled a problem I had. He fulfilled his own purpose in hearing me and asked for nothing in exchange. Why wouldn't I not want to connect and be closer? I'm like, why would you do that, bro? Like, I don't know you. You must want something, So, of course, he wants something. He wants connection too. So that's why I love working for myself, and I love working how I work, because it's not work. It says it on Keith hats. It's my purpose. So, Keith, for the listeners out there, where can they find you?
Yeah. You find me at keithsconiers.com. My handle is also Keith Sconiers on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google. Google me. I'm out there.
Oh,
If
Lord.
you
Google
search
me
my
too.
name
Okay.
with purpose, you search my name with purpose inside of Spotify, you'll find me there as well. And I look forward to connecting. For me, it's really all about connection, like you said. So.
If this was a different podcast, if this was a self-help podcast, you best believe we would have went a whole lot deeper. I would have been crying. He would have been crying.
Yeah.
So, Keith, man, I want to say
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show.
Yep. You bet. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You dropped so many diamonds, both in the last episode and this episode. So we got to have you back. We got to have you back. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
then we'll put that date in the calendar here soon. And until then, for all you listeners, as you already know, you heard this first here on Let's Talk Marketing with Enda. Please make sure you go subscribe. Make sure you share. Please send a rating and a review. And if you do, or if you do, I have a shirt for you. If you don't, God bless you. And may your day be brighter, and may your future be what you want it to be. So I wish you nothing but the best. And that means I'm closing this out. Dream big and Godspeed.
Love it.